3:17 a.m. Christmas morning. While her billionaire husband slept in their $15 million mansion, a 6-month pregnant woman left her 3-carat wedding ring on the kitchen counter and vanished into the night. No note, no warning, no trace. She took only one thing with her, a leather bag containing documents that would destroy everything her husband had built. But here's what makes this story different. She was not running blind. She was not desperate. She was not the stupid, helpless wife her husband believed her to be. She had been planning this escape for 6 months. And that empty flash drive she left in his desk drawer? It was a psychological bomb designed to make him spiral into madness. What her cheating husband and his mistress did not know was that every word they spoke, every secret they shared, every crime they committed, had been recorded by her best friend, who was pretending to be his friend for 8 months. This is not a story about a woman who ran away from her problems. This is a story about a woman who walked away from a monster and then watched him destroy himself trying to find her. The mistress thought she had won. She had no idea that the real nightmare was just beginning. Stay until the end, because the moment she reveals what was really on that flash drive, it will change everything you thought you knew about revenge. This story will teach you that the best revenge is not destruction. It is building a life so extraordinary that the people who hurt you become completely irrelevant. It will show you that patience is power, that strategy beats emotion, and that walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. If you have ever felt trapped, underestimated, or dismissed by someone who should have loved you, this story is for you. If stories like this resonate with you, stories about strength, survival, and ultimate victory, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to walk away from someone who underestimated you? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content we create. Now, let us begin. The Hamptons mansion stood silent in the December darkness, its $15 million facade glittering with Christmas lights that mocked the devastation unfolding inside. Rachel Hartwell paused outside her husband's home office, her hand resting on the swell of her 6-month pregnant belly. The twins kicked, as if sensing the tension radiating through their mother's body. She had come downstairs to retrieve the anniversary card she had hidden in Marcus's desk drawer 3 days ago. A silly, sentimental gesture she had planned for their 5th wedding anniversary dinner tomorrow night. But the moment she reached the hallway, she heard his voice, and then another voice. A woman's voice she recognized instantly, Vanessa Cole, his executive assistant, her friend. Rachel pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain they would hear it. Marcus's laptop sat open on his desk, a video call still connected. He must have thought she was asleep. He must have thought she would never come downstairs at 11:30 on Christmas Eve. He thought wrong. She listened to the voice of Marcus Wellington, the man she had married 5 years ago, the man she had given up her career for, the man whose children she was carrying. Marcus spoke with the casual cruelty of someone who had never considered the possibility of consequences. "The divorce papers are ready," he said. "The moment those babies are born, I file. My lawyers found a loophole in the prenup. She gets almost nothing." Vanessa's voice came through the speaker, honey-sweet and eager. And custody? Full custody to me. I've been documenting her mental instability for months. The therapist I insisted she see, she works for me. Every session has been recorded and edited. By the time my lawyers are done, Rachel will look completely unfit. Rachel's knees nearly buckled. The therapist, Dr. Patricia Newman, the woman she had trusted with her deepest fears, her anxieties about motherhood, her occasional sadness. All of it recorded, all of it twisted into a weapon. Vanessa laughed, and the sound cut through Rachel like a knife. God, you really think of everything. Rachel was never anything but a placeholder, Marcus continued. Good breeding, useful law degree for appearances. But you and your father's company? That is the real prize. The merger makes me untouchable. Does she even know she is just the incubator? Vanessa asked. Rachel heard her husband smile through his words. She is too stupid to figure anything out. She always was stupid. The word echoed in Rachel's mind as she stood frozen in the hallway of the home she had built, decorated, and maintained for 5 years. The home where she had entertained his clients, hosted his business dinners, smiled through his condescension. Stupid. The woman who had graduated top of her class at Georgetown Law, the woman who had been on partnership track at one of the most prestigious firms in New York, before Marcus convinced her to quit. The woman who had spent the last 6 months quietly preparing for this exact moment. Because Rachel Hartwell was not stupid. She had suspected the affair for over a year. She had found the hotel receipts, noticed the late nights, seen the way Vanessa looked at her husband at company events. 6 months ago, she had decided to stop being a victim and start being a strategist. She had copied every financial document she could find. She had recorded Marcus's offshore accounts. She had contacted her best friend Diana and asked her to stay close to Marcus, to gather evidence, to be her eyes and ears. Everyone would think she had been blindsided tonight. The truth was that she had been building her escape for 6 months. She just needed proof of how deep the betrayal went. Now she had it. Rachel did not cry. She did not confront him. She simply backed away from the office door and returned to the master bedroom, where she lay awake until 3 in the morning, finalizing her plan. At 3:17 a.m., Rachel Hartwell walked out of the $15 million mansion she had called home for 5 years. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter, 3 carats of diamond that had once meant forever. Now it meant nothing. She left no note, no explanation. Her phone went into the garbage disposal, destroyed beyond recovery. She took only what mattered: her laptop, her mother's jewelry, her college degrees, the cash she had been hiding for months, and a leather bag containing documents that would eventually destroy Marcus Wellington's entire empire. Before leaving, she placed one final item in Marcus's desk drawer: a flash drive. Empty. But he would not know that for months. It would eat at him, keep him awake at night, make him paranoid about what she might know. Let him wonder, let him spiral, let him destroy himself trying to figure out what his stupid wife had taken. Rachel climbed into the taxi she had called from a burner phone and did not look back. The driver helped her load the bag into the trunk and asked if she was okay. Rachel touched her belly, felt the twins moving, and smiled for the first time in months. "I will be," she said. By dawn, she was on a plane to Austin, Texas. By noon, she had checked into a modest safe house under a new identity. By evening, she had begun building the case that would bring Marcus Wellington to his knees. Her husband had no idea that his perfect, controlled life was about to explode. His mistress, Vanessa, who thought she had won by stealing another woman's husband, had no idea that the real prize was never Marcus at all. It was the woman who had just walked away from him forever. 3 days after Christmas, Marcus Wellington stood in the marble entryway of his Hamptons mansion, holding his wife's wedding ring and trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The house was immaculate. Rachel had always kept it immaculate. Fresh flowers in the foyer, throw pillows perfectly arranged, not a speck of dust anywhere. But something was different now. Something was missing. Rachel was missing. Marcus had returned from his business trip on December 27th, expecting to find his wife waiting with dinner ready, as she always was. Instead, he found silence, an empty closet, a wedding ring on the counter, and a flash drive in his desk drawer that he did not remember putting there. He plugged it into his laptop with shaking hands. Empty. Nothing on it. Just blank storage space. But that was almost worse than finding something. What game was she playing? What did she know? What had she taken? Marcus called his head of security. Find her. I do not care what it costs. Find her now. Then he called Vanessa. She arrived within the hour, barely able to contain her excitement. Marcus watched her walk through the front door, already looking around like she owned the place. She just left? Vanessa asked, her voice dripping with false concern. That is so unlike her. Her phone is disconnected. Her car is still in the garage. She took a taxi to the airport and then disappeared. Disappeared where? I do not know. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. I have people looking. She cannot have gone far. She has no money of her own. Vanessa smiled. Well, maybe this is a good thing. She left you, Marcus? That makes the divorce easier. No one can blame you for a wife who abandoned her family. Marcus barely heard her. He was staring at the flash drive, turning it over in his hands. What did she know? Over the next week, Vanessa Cole settled into the mansion like she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. She called her father to reassure him that the merger was still on track. She started redecorating, replacing Rachel's tasteful beige with bold colors that she insisted were more modern. She threw a New Year's Eve party and played hostess like she had already become Mrs. Wellington. But Marcus was not celebrating. He had hired 3 private investigation firms. He had put alerts on every database he could access. He had called in favors with contacts in law enforcement, in banking, in government. Nothing. Rachel Hartwell had vanished without a trace. No credit card activity, no phone records, no social media, no contact with friends or family. It was like she had ceased to exist. Vanessa found him in his office at 2 in the morning, pacing in front of his computer screens. Marcus, come to bed. She is gone. You won. I have not won until I find her, he snapped. She does not get to just disappear. She does not get to leave without my permission. Vanessa's smile faltered for the first time. Your permission? Marcus, she is your wife, not your property. He turned to look at her with eyes that had gone cold. Everything in my life is my property, Vanessa. Everything and everyone. You would do well to remember that. She backed away slowly, disturbed by what she saw in his face. This was not the charming, sophisticated man who had swept her off her feet. This was something else, something darker. That night, Vanessa lay awake in Rachel's bed, wearing Rachel's silk pajamas, surrounded by Rachel's things, and wondered for the first time if she had made a terrible mistake. In Austin, Texas, 1,500 miles away, Rachel Hartwell sat in a modest room at a women's shelter, eating takeout and working on her laptop. The shelter was run by a woman named Maggie Sullivan, a 52-year-old former corporate executive whose own husband had destroyed her 15 years ago. Maggie understood women like Rachel. She understood what it meant to escape a monster. You are doing well, Maggie said, sitting down across from Rachel with 2 cups of coffee. Most women who come here are running blind. You came with a plan. I have been planning for 6 months, Rachel admitted. He thinks I ran in panic. That is exactly what I want him to think. Maggie studied her carefully. What is on that flash drive you told me about? Rachel smiled. Nothing. It is empty. Then why leave it? Because Marcus needs to control everything. The not knowing will drive him insane. He will spend months trying to figure out what I took, what I know, what I might use against him. Meanwhile, I will be building my actual case. Maggie nodded slowly, impressed. You are not just running from him. You are going to destroy him. No is, Rachel corrected. I am going to let him destroy himself. All I have to do is stay hidden long enough for him to make mistakes. Men like Marcus always make mistakes when they feel like they are losing control. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diana on their secure burner line. He is hiring more investigators. 3 different firms now. Be careful. Rachel typed back quickly. Keep gathering evidence. I need everything you can get. Are you sure about this? Diana replied. Being this close to him is dangerous. I know, but it is the only way. We need recordings, documents, proof of everything he has done. When we finally move against him, I want it to be so overwhelming that he cannot spin it, cannot charm his way out of it. I want the whole world to see who he really is. Rachel set down the phone and looked out the window at the Austin skyline. Somewhere out there, Marcus was tearing his life apart, trying to find her. Good. Let him search. Let him spiral. She had been his stupid wife for 5 years. Now she was going to be his worst nightmare. But first, she had to survive long enough to see it through. The safe house sat on a quiet street in East Austin, a modest 2-story home that looked like any other in the neighborhood. No one would guess that behind its ordinary facade, women were rebuilding their lives, hiding from the men who had tried to destroy them. Rachel had been there for 3 weeks when Maggie Sullivan finally told her the full story. They were sitting in the small office at the back of the house, surrounded by filing cabinets and inspirational posters that seemed almost absurdly hopeful, given the circumstances. Maggie poured 2 glasses of whiskey and slid one across the desk. You need to understand something, Maggie said. Men like your husband do not just let you leave. They hunt, they destroy. They burn down everything around you until you have nowhere left to go. I know, Rachel replied. That is why I have been so careful. Careful is not enough. Maggie took a long drink. I was careful too. I was a CFO at a Fortune 500 company. I had money, connections, a solid reputation. My husband took all of it. He planted evidence of embezzlement, turned my colleagues against me, got me convicted of a crime I did not commit. I spent 2 years in prison. Rachel stared at her. How did you survive? I did not. Not really. The woman I was before died in that prison. What came out was something different. Someone who understood how the game really worked. And the game is? Maggie leaned forward. The game is that men like your husband control the system. They have the money, the connections, the power. You cannot beat them by playing fair. You have to be smarter. You have to be more patient. And you have to be willing to do things that would have horrified your previous self. Rachel thought about the flash drive, the burner phones, Diana pretending to be Marcus's friend while secretly recording his conversations. I think I already crossed that line. Good. Then maybe you have a chance. That night, Rachel reviewed the files Diana had sent, recordings of Marcus bragging to Vanessa about his offshore accounts, screenshots of text messages discussing the fake therapy sessions, financial documents showing suspicious transfers that even Rachel's trained legal eye could recognize as fraud. It was damning, but it was not enough. Marcus had spent 20 years building his empire. He had survived SEC investigations, hostile takeovers, and business rivals who would have done anything to bring him down. A few recordings and documents would not be enough to destroy him. She needed him to implode publicly, spectacularly, in a way that no amount of money or influence could contain. She needed him to break. Meanwhile, in New York, Diana Mercer was playing the most dangerous role of her life. She had been Rachel's best friend since their freshman year at Georgetown. They had studied together, partied together, cried together through breakups, and job rejections and all the small devastations of early adulthood. When Rachel had called her 6 months ago with the truth about Marcus, Diana had not hesitated. "What do you need me to do?" "Stay close to him. Be his friend. Find out everything." It sounded simple. It was anything but. Diana worked in PR crisis management, which meant she understood how to navigate powerful men and their egos. She positioned herself as the concerned friend, always available, to listen to Marcus's complaints about his missing wife, always sympathetic to his growing frustration. "It must be so hard," she would say, letting him pour another glass of wine, not knowing where she is, not knowing what she is thinking. Marcus ate it up. He had always enjoyed having an audience, and Vanessa was increasingly distant, increasingly suspicious of his obsession with finding Rachel. Diana was different. Diana understood him. Diana appreciated him. Diana was recording every word he said. She did it carefully, using devices disguised as jewelry and phone cases. She photographed documents when he left the room. She memorized conversations and wrote them down later in meticulous detail. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. Every time Marcus's security chief looked at her a little too long, every time Marcus mentioned that he was having his associates investigated, Diana felt her heart stop. But she kept going, because Rachel was counting on her, because the man who had destroyed her best friend's life needed to pay. 3 weeks into Rachel's time at the shelter, everything changed. She was in the communal kitchen, making a sandwich, when Maggie burst through the door. "We have a problem. Someone traced a connection to our network. Police are on their way." Rachel's blood went cold. "Marcus? I do not know how, but yes, he could not find you directly, so he burned down your hiding place instead. You have 2 minutes to get out." Rachel grabbed her laptop, her documents, her burner phone. She shoved everything into her bag and ran for the back door. Behind her, she could hear sirens approaching. "Go," Maggie said, pressing $200 in cash into her hand. "There is a bus station 3 blocks west. Get on anything heading south. I will contact you when it is safe." "What about you?" Maggie's smile was sad. "I have been through this before. I will survive. Now go." Rachel ran. She made it to the bus station just as the first police cars pulled up to the shelter. She bought a ticket to Houston with cash and sat in the back of the bus, trying to control her breathing, trying not to cry. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Did you really think you could hide from me? Come home, Rachel, for the children's sake." Marcus. Rachel stared at the message, feeling the twins kick inside her. He had found the shelter. He had found a way to reach her, even on a burner phone. He was everywhere, inescapable, a monster, with unlimited resources and no conscience. For a moment, she wanted to give up, to go home, accept whatever he had planned for her, stop running. Then she remembered his voice on that Christmas Eve call. The casual cruelty, the absolute certainty that she was too stupid to fight back. Rachel deleted the message and smashed the phone under her heel. She was not going home. She was going to war. 1 month after Rachel's disappearance, Marcus Wellington was coming apart at the seams. He sat in his corner office at Wellington Capital, surrounded by the trappings of a $3 billion empire, and felt like everything was slipping through his fingers. His attention had become fractured, his focus destroyed by the constant question that haunted his every waking moment. Where was she? What did she know? What was she planning? The flash drive sat in his top drawer, like a bomb waiting to go off. He had hired forensic specialists, digital security experts, the best technicians money could buy. They had all told him the same thing. The drive was empty. There was nothing on it. But Marcus could not accept that. Rachel must have put it there for a reason. It had to mean something. She could not have just left without taking something, without planning something, without having some way to destroy him. His business partners had started to notice. He missed meetings, forgot about calls, made decisions that cost the company millions. A major acquisition fell through because Marcus had been too distracted to review the final paperwork. "You need to get your head straight," his partner Robert told him during an emergency board meeting. "This obsession with finding your wife is destroying everything we have built." "She is not just my wife," Marcus snapped. "She is carrying my children, my heirs. She does not get to just take them and disappear." "Then hire a lawyer and fight for custody through the courts. But stop letting this personal situation tank our business." Marcus did not hear him. He was already thinking about the next investigator he would hire, the next database he would access, the next person he would pressure for information. Vanessa watched all of this with growing alarm. She had moved into the mansion permanently now, filling Rachel's closets with her own clothes, replacing Rachel's art with pieces she preferred. But the victory felt hollow. Every time she tried to talk about their future, about wedding plans, about the life they were supposed to build together, Marcus changed the subject. "After I find her," he would say. "We will talk about all of that after I find her." One night, Vanessa waited until Marcus was in the shower and went through his phone. What she found made her stomach turn. His search history was filled with queries about tracking missing persons, about hiring private investigators, about legal ways to force someone to return to a jurisdiction. His recent calls were almost entirely to security firms and lawyers. His text messages to her had become perfunctory, distracted, devoid of the passion they once had. But his texts to Diana were different. Long conversations about Rachel, about where she might have gone, about who might be helping her. Diana responded with sympathy and understanding, and Marcus ate it up like a starving man. Vanessa felt something cold settle in her chest. She had spent 2 years waiting for Marcus to leave his wife. She had given up her reputation, her relationships, her self-respect. And now that Rachel was finally gone, Marcus could not stop talking about her. He talks about her more now than when they were married. Vanessa thought. What does that mean? What does any of this mean? She did not know, but she was starting to suspect that she had been played just as badly as Rachel had. In Houston, Rachel was running out of options. She had been living in a cheap motel for 2 weeks, paying cash, using her fake ID, trying to stay invisible. But her money was running low, and she was 7 months pregnant with twins who seemed determined to make every day more uncomfortable than the last. Diana had managed to warn her before the shelter raid, which was the only reason she had escaped. But the close call had shaken her. Marcus was willing to destroy an entire organization just to find her. He had resources and connections that seemed limitless. Every time she thought she was safe, he found a way to get closer. She needed a new strategy. She needed to stop running and start fighting. The call came at 2 in the morning. Rachel answered the burner phone Diana had sent her, her heart pounding. "He is getting worse," Diana said without preamble. "The obsession is consuming him. His business partners are talking about forcing him out. Vanessa is starting to suspect something is wrong." "Good. That is what we wanted." "Rachel, there is something else." Diana's voice was strained. "He mentioned you by name to me last night. He said that when he finds you, he is going to make sure you never see those children again. He has been working with a judge, someone he has in his pocket. He is building a case to have you declared mentally unfit before you even get a hearing." Rachel closed her eyes. "The fake therapy records?" "Yes. And there is more. He has been talking about the merger with Richard Cole. The whole thing depends on him appearing stable and family-oriented. A publicly messy custody battle would destroy the deal. So instead of fighting you in court, he is going to have you committed, quietly, permanently. He cannot do that. He can if he has enough money and the right connections. And Rachel, he has both. Rachel sat down on the edge of the motel bed, her hands shaking. She had known Marcus was dangerous. She had known he was vindictive. But she had not fully understood how far he was willing to go. He was not just trying to find her. He was trying to erase her. "I need to accelerate the plan," Rachel said. "How much evidence do we have? Enough to damage him? Maybe not enough to destroy him? What would be enough?" Diana paused. "A public breakdown. Something so dramatic, so undeniable, that no amount of money can spin it. His image is everything, Rachel. His business, his relationships, his power. It all depends on people believing he is in control. If they see him lose control completely, then everything falls apart." Exactly. Rachel thought about it. Marcus prided himself on his composure, his charm, his ability to manipulate any situation. But she had seen the cracks forming. The flash drive had gotten under his skin. Her disappearance had shaken something loose inside him. What would happen if she pushed harder? What would happen if she made him believe he was about to win, only to pull everything out from under him at the last moment? "I have an idea," Rachel said slowly, "but it is going to take time, and it is going to be dangerous for both of us. Tell me, we let him find me, on our terms, at a time and place we choose. We let him think he has won. And then we show the world exactly who Marcus Wellington really is." The first catastrophe came without warning. Rachel was at a grocery store in Houston, buying food with the last of her cash, when the world suddenly tilted sideways. One moment she was reaching for a carton of eggs, and the next she was on the floor, surrounded by strangers, with someone calling for an ambulance. She woke up in Houston Memorial Hospital, hooked to monitors and IV lines, with a doctor explaining that she had severe preeclampsia. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. The twins were at risk. "We need to keep you here for observation," the doctor said, "at least until your blood pressure stabilizes. The babies may need to come early." Rachel tried to sit up, panic flooding through her. "I cannot stay here. I need to leave." "Mrs. Davis," the doctor said, using the fake name Rachel had given, "if you leave this hospital, you could die. Your babies could die. I understand you are frightened, but right now the safest place for you is right here." Rachel sank back against the pillows, her mind racing. She had no ID, no insurance, no medical history. Hospitals were required to report unidentified patients. If Marcus had alerts set up, and she knew he did, he would know exactly where she was within hours. She was trapped. The second catastrophe came 3 days later. Rachel was still in the hospital, her condition stabilized but not resolved, when Diana called with news that made her blood run cold. "Maggie Sullivan is dead," Diana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are calling it suicide, but Rachel, she was about to be released from custody. She had a meeting with a journalist scheduled for the next day. Someone got to her." Rachel could not breathe. Maggie, who had helped her escape. Maggie, who had understood what it meant to survive a monster. Maggie, who had spent 15 years rebuilding her life only to have it taken away. "He killed her," Rachel said. It was not a question. "I cannot prove it, but yes, I think so." Rachel looked at her babies through the window of the NICU. They had been born 3 days ago, premature but healthy. Emma and Noah, her children, her reason for fighting. Marcus had killed Maggie to send a message. He was capable of murder. This was not just about control anymore. This was about elimination. "We need to move faster," Rachel said. "Whatever evidence you have, we need to use it now." "There is more," Diana said hesitantly. "He knows you are in Houston. He does not know which hospital yet, but he is narrowing it down. And Rachel, he has filed for emergency custody of the twins." The third catastrophe. The process server found Rachel in her hospital room 2 hours later. She read through the filing with trembling hands. Marcus Wellington was claiming that Rachel was mentally unstable, a flight risk, and a danger to her children. He had submitted fabricated therapy records, bank statements showing erratic withdrawals, testimony from witnesses who claimed she had been acting irrationally for months. And attached to the filing was a sworn statement from Caroline Hartwell, Rachel's own sister. "My sister has exhibited erratic behavior for years," Caroline had written. "I fear for the safety of her unborn children. I believe Marcus Wellington would provide a more stable home." Rachel called Caroline immediately. Her sister answered on the second ring. "How could you?" Rachel demanded. "How could you do this to me?" Caroline's voice was defensive, defiant. "He paid off my student loans, Rachel, $200,000, and Tom got a job at a Wellington subsidiary. A good job, with benefits and stock options. We have kids too, you know. We have bills. You helped him destroy my life for money? You always had everything," Caroline shot back. "The looks, the grades, the rich husband. For once I got something. I am sorry, but I am not sorry." Rachel hung up without another word. She sat in her hospital bed, surrounded by machines that monitored her baby's vital signs, and felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. Her mentor was dead. Her sister had betrayed her. Her husband was coming for her children, and she had 72 hours until a custody hearing that she had almost no chance of winning. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she had not called in 3 years. The one person Caroline could not have compromised, because they had not spoken since Rachel's wedding. Her mother answered on the fourth ring. "Rachel?" Evelyn Hartwell's voice was exactly as Rachel remembered it, cold, composed, aristocratic. "Mom, I need your help." A long pause. "I told you Marcus was wrong for you. I know you did, and you were right, but I do not need. I told you so right now. I need help, real help, the kind that only you can provide." Another pause, longer this time. Then Evelyn's voice changed, becoming something sharper, more focused. "Tell me everything." Rachel did. She told her mother about the affair, the fake therapy sessions, the plan to have her declared unfit. She told her about the escape, the shelter, Maggie's death. She told her about Diana's evidence, about the recordings, about everything they had gathered over the past 8 months. When she finished, Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "You have been planning this for 6 months," her mother finally said. "Building a case against him while pretending to be oblivious." "Yes? Why did you not come to me? I could have helped from the beginning, because you would have tried to control the situation, to manage it your way. I needed to do this myself." Evelyn laughed, a dry sound without much humor in it. "You always were the stubborn one. Fine, you did it yourself, and now you need help. What exactly do you want from me? Money, connections, a lawyer who is not afraid of Marcus Wellington. I can provide all of those things. But Rachel, there is something you need to understand. If we go to war with Marcus, we need to win, not just damage him, not just embarrass him. Win, completely and permanently. Because if we do not, he will spend the rest of his life making you pay." "I know." "Do you? Because the Rachel I remember would have tried to be fair, to give him a chance to do the right thing. That Rachel cannot win this fight." Rachel looked at her sleeping babies, at the custody papers on her bedside table. At the text message from Marcus's that had found her, even here, even now. That Rachel is dead, she said. She died the night she heard her husband call her stupid. What is left is someone who is going to burn Marcus Wellington's entire world to the ground. Evelyn's response was immediate and fierce. Good, then let us begin. The custody hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. That gave Rachel 72 hours to prepare for the most important battle of her life. Evelyn arrived at the hospital on Friday afternoon, accompanied by a man Rachel did not recognize. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made everyone in the room pay attention. "This is Harrison Blake," Evelyn said. "He was the best divorce attorney in New York before he retired. He came out of retirement as a personal favor to me." Harrison shook Rachel's hand with a firm grip. "Your mother and I go back a long way. When she told me what Marcus Wellington has been doing, I was happy to help. Men like him give the legal profession a bad name." "Can we win?" Rachel asked. Harrison sat down and opened his briefcase. "That depends on what you mean by winning. If you mean getting custody of your children, yes. We have more than enough evidence to prove Marcus is unfit. But if you mean destroying him completely, making sure he can never hurt you or anyone else again, that requires something more dramatic." "Like what?" "Like a public breakdown. Something so undeniable that even his money and connections cannot spin it. Right now, Marcus controls the narrative. He is the betrayed husband, the concerned father. We need the world to see who he really is. We need him to show them himself." Diana arrived an hour later, carrying a box of evidence she had gathered over 8 months of playing double agent. "Audio recordings of Marcus admitting to planting the therapist," she said, laying out files on Rachel's hospital bed. "Video of him discussing offshore accounts with Vanessa. Text messages threatening witnesses, financial documents showing securities fraud, and this," she held up a flash drive. "A recording of Marcus discussing how to make the Maggie Sullivan problem go away, 3 days before she died." Rachel stared at the evidence. 8 months of work, of risk, of Diana pretending to be Marcus's friend while secretly documenting his every crime. It was more than she had dared hope for. "Is it enough?" she asked. Harrison reviewed the materials carefully. "It is enough to destroy his business, his reputation, and his freedom. The SDUC violations alone could put him away for years. The conspiracy to commit murder, if we can prove it, means life in prison. Then, why do we need him to break down publicly? Because of the custody case." Harrison set down the files. "Family court judges do not like drama. If we walk in there with all this evidence and start making accusations about murder and fraud, the judge will think we are trying to distract from Rachel's supposed mental instability. Marcus's lawyers will argue that this is all fabricated, that Rachel is delusional, that the evidence was obtained illegally. It will become a he said, she said, and Marcus has more resources to make his version sound credible. So what do? We make Marcus show the world who he really is. In the courtroom, in front of witnesses, on the record, we let him think he is winning. We let him get comfortable, arrogant, certain of his victory, and then we pull out the evidence at exactly the right moment and watch him explode." Rachel understood. Marcus's greatest strength was his control, his ability to charm, to manipulate, to present exactly the image he wanted people to see. If they could make him lose that control in a public setting, with cameras and witnesses, no amount of money could undo the damage. "How do we make him lose control?" Diana smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "I have an idea about that." The plan came together over the next 48 hours. Diana would continue to play her role as Marcus's sympathetic friend. She would feed him information about Rachel's location, about her condition, about how vulnerable she was. She would make him believe that victory was imminent, that Rachel was finally going to pay for running away. He needs to feel invincible when he walks into that courtroom, Diana said. He needs to believe that everything is going according to plan. Because when someone feels invincible, they stop being careful. Rachel would arrive at the hearing looking calm and composed, the opposite of the mentally unstable woman Marcus had described. She would let Marcus's lawyers present their fabricated evidence first. She would let Marcus believe he was winning, and then, at exactly the right moment, she would play Anna's recordings for the entire courtroom. The key is timing, Harrison explained. We need him to react before he has time to think, before his lawyers can object or redirect. We need raw, unfiltered Marcus Wellington, showing everyone exactly what he is capable of. What if it does not work? Rachel asked. What if he keeps his composure? He will not, Diana said with certainty. I have watched him for 8 months. The obsession with finding you has been eating him alive. The flash drive, the empty flash drive you left behind, it has been driving him insane. He cannot handle not knowing what you know. When he realizes you have been playing him this whole time, when he understands that you were never his stupid wife, he will lose it completely. Rachel nodded slowly. It was a good plan. A dangerous plan, but a good one. There is something else, she said. Something I want Marcus to know, after all of this is over. What? The flash drive. I want him to know it was empty. I want him to know that he spent months destroying himself over nothing, that the whole time he thought he was hunting me, I was actually hunting him. Diana laughed. That is cold, Rachel. He called me stupid. He was going to take my children. He killed someone who helped me. Rachel's voice was hard as steel. Cold is the least of what he deserves. On Sunday night, Diana sent Marcus a text message. I found her. Rachel is in Houston Memorial Hospital. She had the babies early. She is weak, vulnerable. If you move fast, you can get to her before the custody hearing. Marcus's response came within seconds. Thank you, Diana. You are a true friend. I will not forget this. Diana stared at the message for a long moment. Then she deleted it and called Rachel. He is coming. Are you ready? Rachel looked at her sleeping children, at the evidence spread across her bed, at the woman she had become over the past 8 months of running, hiding, and planning. I have been ready for a long time, she said. Let us finish this. Family court in Houston was not designed for drama. It was a bland, institutional space with fluorescent lighting and uncomfortable chairs. The kind of place where lives were changed in quiet, procedural ways. Today would be different. Rachel arrived at 8:30 in the morning, flanked by her mother and Harrison Blake. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a simple navy dress that emphasized her recent weight loss, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked calm, professional, competent, the opposite of mentally unstable. Marcus arrived at 8:45 with a team of 5 attorneys and an air of supreme confidence. He barely glanced at Rachel. As he took his seat, he was already planning his victory speech, already imagining the moment when he would finally have his children under his control. Vanessa sat in the gallery, dressed in expensive designer clothes, playing the role of supportive partner. She still believed she was going to win. She still believed that once this messy business with Rachel was over, she and Marcus would finally have their happy ending. She had no idea what was coming. Diana was there too, sitting near the back where Marcus could not see her. She had a recording device in her purse, ready to capture everything that happened. This was the moment they had been building toward for 8 months. If it went wrong, they lost everything. The judge, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Morrison, called the court to order. Marcus's lead attorney stood up and began presenting their case. It was devastating on the surface. The fabricated therapy records painted Rachel as delusional, paranoid, possibly a danger to herself and others. Dr. Patricia Newman, the therapist Marcus had planted, testified that Rachel had exhibited signs of severe mental instability throughout her sessions. She produced session notes that described Rachel's supposed obsessions, anxieties, and breaks from reality. Caroline Hartwell testified via video link, her face a mask of false concern as she described her sister's erratic behavior. She talked about Rachel's mood swings, her irrational fears, her inability to cope with the pressures of married life. Bank records showed Rachel withdrawing large amounts of cash in the weeks before her disappearance. Behavior that, according to Marcus's lawyers, demonstrated a planned abandonment of her family. Through all of this, Rachel sat quietly, her face neutral. She did not react, did not show emotion, did not give Marcus or the judge any reason to believe she was unstable. Harrison had coached her on this. Stay calm, stay composed. Let them think they are winning. Marcus himself took the stand. The picture of wounded fatherhood. I just want my children to be safe, he said, his voice carefully modulated to convey concern and sadness. I love Rachel. I have always loved her, but her behavior over the past year has been increasingly erratic. I was trying to get her help, trying to support her through whatever she was going through, and then she just vanished, took our children, and disappeared. He paused, letting emotion color his voice. I do not know what I did wrong. I do not know why she would do this, but I know that those babies deserve a stable home, a father who loves them, a father who will always be there for them. It was a masterful performance. Rachel could see the judge softening, could see the sympathy forming in her eyes. Marcus was doing what he did best, manipulating everyone in the room. Then it was Rachel's turn. Harrison stood up slowly, deliberately. Your Honor, if I may, I would like to present some evidence that I believe is relevant to this case. Marcus's lawyer objected immediately. Your Honor, this is a custody hearing. Any evidence should have been submitted through proper channels. This evidence was only recently obtained, Harrison replied smoothly, and I believe Your Honor will find it extremely relevant to the question of which parent can provide a stable home for these children. The judge considered for a moment, then nodded. I will allow it. Proceed. Harrison connected his laptop to the courtroom's audio system. Your Honor, what you are about to hear is a series of recordings made over the past 8 months by a witness to Mr. Wellington's behavior. They paint a very different picture of the concerned father we have been hearing about today. He pressed play. The first recording was Marcus's voice, clear and unmistakable, talking to Vanessa about the fake therapy sessions. The therapist I insisted she see? She works for me. Every session has been recorded and edited. By the time my lawyers are done, Rachel will look completely unfit. The courtroom went silent. The second recording was Marcus discussing his financial arrangements with Vanessa's father. Rachel was never anything but a placeholder. Good breeding, useful law degree for appearances. But you and your father's company, that is the real prize. Rachel looked at Vanessa in the gallery. The color had drained from her face. She was finally understanding what she had always been to Marcus. A business transaction, a means to an end. The third recording was Marcus talking about witness intimidation. Those 3 women who agreed to testify for Rachel make sure they understand what happens to people who cross me. Their families, their jobs, everything they care about. Make sure they understand. The fourth recording was the one Rachel had been waiting for. Marcus discussing Maggie Sullivan. The woman running that shelter is becoming a problem. She was supposed to be released yesterday, but she has a meeting with a journalist. We need to make that problem go away. The recording was dated 3 days before Maggie's supposed suicide. The courtroom erupted. Marcus's lawyers were shouting objections. The judge was banging her gavel. Reporters in the gallery were already typing on their phones, sending the news out into the world. But Rachel was watching Marcus. She saw the moment he understood, the moment he realized that she had been playing him all along, that the stupid wife he had dismissed for years had outmaneuvered him completely. His carefully constructed mask crumbled. "Those recordings are fabricated," Marcus shouted, standing up so violently that his chair flew backward. "She is lying. She has always been lying." "Mr. Wellington, sit down," the judge ordered. But Marcus was beyond hearing. 8 months of obsession, paranoia, and slowly mounting fear had finally found an outlet. He lunged toward Rachel, his face contorted with rage. "You cannot do this to me. Do you know who I am? I will destroy you. I will." Bailiffs grabbed him before he could reach her. It took 3 of them to hold him back as he screamed, cursed, and threatened everyone in the room. "You are all going to pay for this. Every single one of you. I will burn this entire system to the ground. I will." The judge ordered him removed from the courtroom. Rachel watched as the man who had terrorized her for 5 years was dragged away like a rabid animal. She watched as Vanessa stared in horror at the monster she had chosen over her own dignity. She watched as the reporters captured every moment on their phones. It was over. Or rather, it was just beginning. The hashtag Wellington Breakdown was trending within hours. Videos of Marcus being dragged from the courtroom spread across every social media platform. The recordings Diana had gathered were leaked to journalists, who fell over themselves to cover the story. Every news outlet in the country was running pieces about the billionaire who had tried to destroy his pregnant wife and ended up destroying himself. Vanessa Cole watched the coverage from her apartment, unable to look away. The woman she had been 48 hours ago, the confident, triumphant other woman, was gone. In her place was someone she did not recognize, someone who had helped a monster hurt innocent people, someone whose voice was on those recordings, laughing about Rachel being an incubator. Her phone rang constantly, reporters wanting comments, friends calling to distance themselves, her father, whose voice had never been colder. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" Richard Cole demanded. "The merger is dead. My board is demanding my resignation. You have destroyed this family." "Daddy, I did not know." "You knew enough. You laughed about that woman being an incubator. That is on every news channel. Do not call me again." He hung up. Vanessa sat alone in the apartment that now felt like a prison, surrounded by the expensive things Marcus had bought her, and understood for the first time what she had done. She had helped a man torment his wife. She had laughed about the abuse, participated in the cruelty, believed every lie he told her. She had thought she was winning. She had thought Rachel was the loser, the pathetic wife who could not hold on to her husband. Now Rachel was on every television screen, being praised for her courage and her intelligence, and Vanessa was the villain of the story. 1 week later, Vanessa went to the detention facility where Marcus was being held. She needed to see him. She needed to understand. She needed him to tell her that it had meant something, that she had been more than just a business arrangement. Marcus sat across from her in the visiting room, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his face haggard and unshaven. He looked nothing like the sophisticated billionaire who had swept her off her feet. "Marcus, I stood by you," Vanessa said, her voice breaking. "I gave up everything. Tell them I was not involved." Tell them I did not know about any of it." Marcus looked at her with eyes that had gone completely cold. "Know about it? You were part of it. Every recording has your voice, your laugh. You are going down with me." "But you said you loved me. You said we would be together." "I say a lot of things to get what I want," Marcus replied. "Did you not figure that out yet? You were never the prize, Vanessa. Your father's company was, and now that is gone too. So, what exactly are you good for?" Vanessa stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. He had never loved her. He had never even liked her. She was just another transaction, another tool to be used and discarded. She had betrayed Rachel, destroyed her own reputation, alienated her family, all for a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. "You are a monster," she whispered. "I am a businessman," Marcus corrected. "And you were a bad investment." The guard told Vanessa time was up. She walked out of the facility in a daze, barely aware of her surroundings. 3 weeks later, she was charged as an accessory to witness tampering and fraud. Her assets were frozen, her social circle evaporated. The women who had attended her dinner parties gave interviews about how they had always known something was wrong with her. She tried to get a job. Nobody would hire her. She applied at a restaurant, and they Googled her name and told her the position was filled. 6 months later, Vanessa Cole was working as a cocktail waitress in a bar in Reno, Nevada, using her mother's maiden name. She was serving drinks on a Thursday night when she glanced up at the television in the corner. Rachel Hartwell was on Good Morning America, promoting her best-selling book about escaping an abusive marriage. She looked radiant, successful, happy. A customer recognized Vanessa. "Hey, are you not that woman from the Wellington trial? The Mistress?" Vanessa said nothing. She took his order and walked to the back room where she cried alone. This was her life now. This was what she had won. Caroline Hartwell watched the trial coverage from her living room in Connecticut, clutching a glass of wine with shaking hands. The news was calling it the trial of the decade. Marcus Wellington, charged with conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, obstruction of justice, and multiple securities violations. The evidence was overwhelming. Diana's recordings, the financial documents, the testimony of women Marcus had destroyed over the years. And at the center of it all was Caroline's sworn statement, the statement she had made for $200,000, the statement that had been exposed as perjury. The Bar Association had already opened an investigation into her husband Tom, who had helped draft the statement. His law license was suspended pending review. Their beautiful house in the suburbs was mortgaged to the hilt, and with Tom unable to work, they were falling behind on payments. The $200,000 Marcus had paid them, the FBI had seized it as proceeds of fraud. Caroline called Rachel the night before Marcus's sentencing. She did not really expect her sister to answer, but Rachel picked up on the third ring. "Rachel, please. I know I do not deserve it, but Tom has lost everything. The kids have to change schools. We have nowhere to go." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You sold me for $200,000, Caroline. You helped a man who wanted to take my children. You testified that I was an unfit mother while I was fighting for my life." I know I was wrong, but we are family." "No." Rachel's voice was hard as iron. "We are not. Family does not sell each other. I hope you find a way to live with what you did, but you will do it without me." The line went dead. Caroline sat alone in her darkened living room, surrounded by the wreckage of her choices, and understood that some betrayals could never be forgiven. The sentencing hearing took place on a gray November morning, 1 year after Rachel had walked out of the Hamptons mansion at 3 in the morning. The federal courthouse was packed with reporters, spectators, and victims of Marcus Wellington's various schemes. Rachel sat in the front row, flanked by Diana and her mother. She had dressed simply, conservatively. She was not here to make a statement. She was here to watch justice be served. Marcus Wellington stood before the judge, aged 10 years in the 12 months since his arrest. His expensive lawyers had done everything they could, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The recordings, the documents, the testimony. There was no way to spin it, no way to charm his way out. The charges were read: conspiracy to commit murder, guilty; witness tampering, guilty; obstruction of justice, guilty; securities fraud, guilty. The sentence was 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. Marcus was led away in handcuffs. As he passed Rachel's row, he stopped. The guards let him pause for just a moment. "You planned this," he said, his voice hollow. "All of it, from the beginning." Rachel met his eyes, without flinching. "You called me stupid, Marcus. Turns out I was smart enough to let you destroy yourself. All I had to do was get out of your way and watch. I will find a way out. I will appeal. I will sue." "No, you will not. Because in 25 years, you will be 71 years old. Your money is gone. Your company is bankrupt. Your name is synonymous with monster. You have nothing left, and I have everything." She leaned close enough for only him to hear. "You wanted to know what was on that flash drive I left in your desk?" "Nothing. It was empty. I just wanted you to spend months being paranoid about what I might know. And it worked." Marcus's face crumbled. The realization that she had manipulated him from the very beginning, that his stupid wife had been playing chess while he thought they were playing checkers, that he had lost completely. Guards pulled him away. Rachel watched him go without a trace of satisfaction or regret. He was the past now. He did not matter anymore. After the hearing, Rachel drove to a cemetery on the outskirts of Houston. Maggie Sullivan's grave was simple, marked by a modest headstone that did not begin to capture who she had been: a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had dedicated her life to helping others escape the monsters she knew all too well. Rachel placed flowers on the grave, the same kind Maggie had kept in her shelter office. "I got him, Maggie," she said softly. 25 years. He will die in prison." She knelt beside the headstone, touching the cold stone. "Your shelter is being rebuilt. I am funding it. 100 women a year will get help because of you. The building will be called Margaret Sullivan House." A wind stirred the flowers, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. "You told me I had to stop running and start fighting. I listened. Thank you." Rachel stayed at the grave for a long time, saying goodbye to the woman who had saved her life. Then she drove home to her children. 2 years after walking out of the Hamptons mansion, Rachel Hartwell stood at the window of her law office in Austin, watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold. The office was modest by her old standards. No marble floors or crystal chandeliers, just comfortable furniture, warm lighting, and walls covered with thank you letters from the women she had helped. The sign on the door read, "Hartwell Advocacy Group, protecting women, protecting families." In the 2 years since Marcus's conviction, Rachel had built something she was genuinely proud of: a legal practice dedicated to helping women escape dangerous marriages, a foundation that funded shelters and support services, a book that had sold over 500,000 copies and helped countless women understand that they were not alone. She was not doing it for revenge anymore. She was doing it because she understood, in a way that few people could, what it felt like to be trapped, to believe the lies someone told you about yourself, to think you had no options, no power, no way out. She wanted other women to know the truth, that they were stronger than they believed, that escape was possible, that their lives could be rebuilt better than before. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Rachel, your 4 o'clock is here, and this came in the mail." Rachel took the envelope, a letter from her publisher. Her second book, The Long Game: How I Escaped a Billionaire and Built a Better Life, had just hit the bestseller list. She smiled and set it aside. There would be time to celebrate later. Right now, she had a client to see, a young mother trapped in a situation just like Rachel had been. Scared, desperate, convinced she had no options. Rachel knew exactly what to say to her. That evening, Rachel drove home to the house she had bought 6 months ago. A modest place in a family-friendly neighborhood, with a backyard for the kids to play in, and a kitchen big enough to actually cook in. Nothing like the mansion in the Hamptons, nothing like the life she used to live. Better. Emma and Noah came running the moment she walked through the door. They were 2.5 now, healthy and happy, completely unaware of the storm that had surrounded their birth. "Mommy, Mommy!" Emma shouted, grabbing Rachel's leg. "Daddy made spaghetti." Rachel's heart swelled at the word, Daddy. Not Marcus, who had wanted these children as possessions. James Brennan, who wanted them as family. She had met James 8 months ago through Diana. He was a high school teacher, of all things, not wealthy, not powerful, not impressive by any of the metrics Rachel used to care about. Just kind, just genuine, just present. Their wedding had been small, 20 people in a garden, with Emma as the flower girl and Noah as the ring bearer. Rachel had worn a simple white dress and cried through most of the ceremony. Happy tears. For the first time in years, happy tears. James came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "How was work?" "Good. I think we can help her." The new client. "Of course you can." He kissed her forehead. "You help everyone." "Not everyone. Just the ones who want to help themselves." That night, after the kids were asleep and the dishes were done, Rachel's phone rang. An unknown number. She answered it anyway. "Rachel," her mother's voice. "I wanted you to know. Marcus Wellington died this morning, heart attack in his cell. He was alone." Rachel stood by the window, looking out at the Texas stars, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, nothing at all. "Thank you for telling me. Are you all right?" "I have been all right for a long time, Mom. His death does not change that. His life did not define mine, and his death will not either." There was a long pause. When Evelyn spoke again, her voice was different, softer. "I am proud of you, Rachel. I should have said that years ago. I am proud of who you became. Thank you, Mom. I will call you Sunday. The kids want to video chat with Grandma." She hung up and went to the window. James came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Everything okay?" Rachel leaned back against him, feeling the warmth of his body, the steadiness of his presence. "Everything is perfect," she said. She meant it. The next morning, Rachel sat at the breakfast table with her family. James was making pancakes, while Emma demanded more syrup and Noah threw pieces of scrambled egg at the dog they had adopted last month. It was chaos. Beautiful, ordinary, wonderful chaos. A newspaper sat unread on the counter. The headline announced Marcus Wellington's death in prison. Rachel glanced at it while Emma asked for juice. She picked up the newspaper, walked to the recycling bin, and dropped it in without reading a single word. Then she sat back down with her family and ate breakfast. The past was over. The future was bright. And Rachel Hartwell, the woman who had walked out of a $15 million mansion with nothing but determination and a plan, had finally found everything she had ever wanted. Not revenge, not victory, just peace, just love, just home. 5 years after Marcus Wellington's death, Rachel Hartwell Brennan stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a crowd of over 1,000 people. The occasion was the 5th anniversary of the Margaret Sullivan House Network, which had grown from a single shelter to over 20 facilities across the country. In 5 years, they had helped more than 4,000 women and children escape dangerous situations. Rachel spoke about Maggie, about the courage it took to help others when you had barely survived yourself. She spoke about the women she had met over the years, their strength, their resilience, their determination to build better lives. She did not speak about Marcus. He was not worth mentioning. After the speech, Diana found her backstage. "Good job," Diana said, hugging her tightly. "Maggie would be proud." "I hope so. She would be. I know she would be." That evening, Rachel flew home to Austin. James picked her up at the airport with Emma and Noah, who were 7 now, and full of questions about her trip. She answered them all as they drove home through the Texas night. Yes, the speech went well. Yes, she met nice people. Yes, she missed them the whole time. At home, she tucked the kids into bed, kissed James goodnight, and stood alone at the window for a long moment. She thought about the woman she had been 10 years ago, the successful attorney who had given up everything for a man who never deserved her, the wife who had believed she was too stupid to survive on her own, the mother who had fled into the night with nothing but hope and a plan. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, more complete. Someone who had learned that the best revenge was not destruction. It was building a life so good that the people who had hurt you became irrelevant. Marcus Wellington was dead and buried. Vanessa Cole was serving drinks in a Nevada bar. Caroline Hartwell was still picking up the pieces of her shattered life. And Rachel was happy. Truly, completely, finally happy. She went to bed beside her husband and slept peacefully until morning. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.